Hello and welcome back to Yoga with Laura Ashland. Please hit the subscribe button down below and continue to follow me with a very gentle, easy, your way yoga. I've come from the school of thought that there is only one yoga, and it's the yoga that you do. I know there's all kinds of schools, over 20 of them, all kinds of gurus that teach, the light that teaches, but yoga should be about what you can do, challenging the body safely to continue to have good health and to have stretch and strength balanced. However, it's your pace. It's fast or slow that you go. So welcome and thank you. Today's very short clip will be about the wrist. The wrist is #1 injury in yoga at this point in Western society. It may change, but because we type and we read and we drive and we eat, we're really not laborers so much anymore. We have a technological society and artists, teachers overusing the wrist and so on. So we're not really lifting and having strength anymore. Now, not that the agricultural group has a very strong body, but most of the population lives in urban areas, and so the lifting and strengthening of the wrist is not there. We see a lot of people in down dog that end up, shaking the wrist out and so on. So, or they could be in plank or lunges. A lot of flexion goes on in the wrist, and this is what is challenging us. Also, we have server industry. Oh my goodness, a whole industry of carpal tunnel inflammation here because they're lifting heavy plates like this and they're getting this inflammation. So when you put on a wrist brace to protect your wrist, it goes straight up. When we sleep, as I said in the early morning yoga, bring your hand underneath your pillow and keep your wrist as straight as possible. So the wrist does 3 things. It will flex. It will extension out straight, and also extend down. It's the top of the wrist. The wrist will rotate both directions. Not very happy. So I still recommend that you continue to do these things, right? But rotation is available, but what's really rotating seems to me to be the low forearm. Yes, the wrist is going around, the fists are going. They have that ability to rotate both directions, but it's not their strength, just like in the ankle and the neck. They have this rotation, but it isn't very safe, and it isn't very strong. Whereas straight out, flexing straight out, dropping to extend, that's where the wrist gets its strength. So to give you some options when you're in your practice, whether you're flowing or you're static, you're doing more static holding postures, the wrist has a few different choices. And one of them, of course, is straight down, but I'm lining up. That's strong. That protects the shoulder, protects the elbow, protects the wrist. But this is a lot of weight down on these tiny little bones. They look like little stones. And then you've got a tiny little carpal tunnel bone here that looks almost like the side of a tweezer. It's very flat, it's very thin, and of course we tend to put power into the wrist before we put it into the hand. We want to make sure power in the hand, then into the wrist, then into the brachilius of the small muscles of the low forearm. So straight down in alignment is great if you don't have a wrist issue. That is safe alignment all around. If not, step out 1 or 2 inches, and you are definitely offline. The Iyengar people will maybe not be very happy with that, but it's temporary, and it's until our wrists get stronger. So we step out of line a little bit, definitely much more of a slope. The shoulder is a little bit more vulnerable, but it's less pressure on the wrist. So this is another choice. A second or third choice, because there's so many, is fist for wrist, straight down. You have 14 joints in each hand, and you have this nice fist. You have a nice flat surface to rely on. So fists for wrists is another thing that you can do while you're strengthening your flexion of the wrist, while it can still stay strong. The issue here is for people that have arthritis in their hand joints. This is very, and like rings, don't wear lots of rings to class, but arthritis is pretty tough. You're putting a lot of pressure on the inflammation of the joints in the hand. So be very careful there. If you do not have arthritis and this works for you, great. One of the things that we don't want to do as fist for wrists, such as in down dog, where I am stretching down here, this is kind of over stretching the inside tendons here. And then we get inflammation again, and then the wrists have to heal. So if you're going to do fist for wrist, make sure that you are directly down or maybe just a little bit out like the other hand. But we're not going to take that arm into that 45-degree stretch. So no to this, okay? Yes to this, and possibly out just a little bit. Yes to that, so fist for wrist as well. Another choice for the wrist and hands, and I do it a lot, I just do it without thinking because I like the height. I like to get away from the mat too. So if I don't have a block available, or I just don't want that crunching down to the mat, I will come into what's tenting the fingers. So tenting the fingers, it looks a little like kind of a tent. So this is another way to do it. Sometimes you don't want to collapse that first digit. That happens if you're looking down, you go, whoa. So you do want to come onto the pads of the fingers and have a nice arc here. But this lift not only strengthens, these muscles are contracted, this is stretched out muscles. So I've lifted it up to contract my hand muscles, my palm muscles, in order to support these 14 digits. And remember, that becomes 28. So we do want to empower our hand here, but look at this beautiful wrist. It's floating. It has this wonderful line. It's not collapsing. It's not maybe overdoing. This is a twisting issue here. Be careful. But this nice tenting the fingers up and getting some height here is safest for the wrist while you're strengthening. Not that eventually we don't want to put the full palm down. That's the Hasta seal. The hand seal is so important, but if the wrists are bothering us, we'll end up not coming back to our mat. So if you're in flexion, all these different things with the wrist, and especially the flexion, when you come back to a child's posture, or really any time, you want to take your hands behind you, any amount. Let's say I'm resting my head, and take the wrist joints into the opposite direction that they've been in. So if this was a flexion, this is going to be a nice extension. So put that in your toolbox as you're practicing, and re-stretch the wrists in the opposite direction, bringing the fingertips up to the sky. So that was our wrists for today, just a short clip. Again, #1 injury trending now because we are not a labor, most of us are not a labor society anymore. I lifted water buckets as a child, so my wrists are fairly strong. That's a lot, heavy water buckets and hay bales and stuff and grain buckets. So I don't do that anymore, and I haven't done it for, I'm going to tell you how many years, but yoga has helped me maintain the strength in the wrist, but skipping over any injury. If you are injurious, please wait to rest, take care of things. Again, heat and the ice. Of course, see your professionals, but lots of choices for wrist and yoga.